everyone, so today I am bringing you my April reviews. I didn't read quite as much in April as I have in the past 2 months. I only read about 5 books, 3 of which were kind of more novella length, one of which was quite big, but I think I was really distracted by the fact that I got into grad school and just, I haven't had a big reading mojo. The weather's nice. I've kind of been doing other things like focusing on getting like my stuff sorted to get ready to move and university stuff, but I did read some good stuff. So the first thing that I read was Anne Tyler's Vinegar Girl. Now this is an advanced reader's copy. I was sent this by Penguin Canada, and I had intended on including these books in my Shakespeare week, which I did last month. But because these are part of the Hogarth Shakespeare, this and A Gap in Time, which is a retelling of A Winter's Tale, and then I also have My Name is Shylock, I think, which is a retelling of The Merchant of Venice. This is a retelling of The Taming of the Shrew, which is not one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. I have seen it performed, and it was a really interesting interpretation. Like, it made it really problematic. It made it really clear that this was abuse and rape, and yeah, so I went into this thinking, okay, like, I love 10 Things I Hate About You, which is one of my favorite, like, Shakespeare adaptations. And I'm like, I really want to read this. So I read this at the beginning of the month, hoping to be able to include it, and this is a 1-star review. I feel really bad because I was really hoping to include these in Shakespeare Week, but I'm just not enjoying them. Sadly, yeah, this just doesn't do it for me. So basically, this tells about Kate Batista and her sister Bunny, who live with their dad, who's a scientist, who wants to marry Kate off to his assistant, who's going to be deported because his papers are up, I guess. And so it's that story, and it's just, there's a part near the end, so spoiler warning, but basically Kate goes on a rant about how men have it so hard because they aren't allowed to show their feelings, and it's so much harder to be a man these days than it is to be a woman. And that's when this got a 1-star rating. Yeah, not a fan. This is my first Anne Tyler book. I know she wrote one of the finalists for the Man Booker Prize, Spill a Blue Thread, which I have no intention of reading because, quite frankly, as this is an introduction, yeah, not great. If she is redeemable, let me know in the comments down below, but this is not an author I'm going to be pursuing. So on to something much better, and my booktube recommends for the month of April, which was from Ange over at Beyond the Pages, and it is Muriel Sparks' The Driver's Seat. This is a really short novella, and it's got, I think, 4 out of 5 stars from me. I really enjoyed this. This is a very twisted work. It's not what you expect going into it. I really did not expect the ending. I'm trying not to give anything away because I want people to read this. Definitely one of my favorite modern classics. Certainly this year, and I think maybe last year, not including Shirley Jackson because she's just in a league of her own, let's be entirely honest. But yes, definitely really enjoyed this. Basically, it's about this woman who goes on vacation and stuff happens. And I can't say any more than that without giving anything away. So go read The Driver's Seat. It's quite short. I think I read it in like 1 sitting. Next up, I read Maria Edgeworth's Castle Rackard. I have read Belinda by Maria Edgeworth before. She is a 1790, like this was published in the 1790s, so she's an 18th century author. I had this on my shelf and I decided to pick it up because I was listening to the New Statesman Forgotten Histories podcast, which currently is doing a series about women authors before Jane Austen. And I'd read Belinda and really enjoyed it, and this was like in the first podcast, this was the one that they're like, read this book, and it was quite short, so I picked it up. And it is a nationalistic Irish tale, and so it's really interesting. I can't say I like this as much as Belinda. Belinda, I would say, is a much better place to start, but it certainly is an interesting and quite short. I think it's only like 100 pages or something, but it's told through the perspective of a servant of like a wealthy Irish family, and there was no gendered terms for the servant, so I'm not sure if they were male or female, but they had been around for about 3 or 4 generations of this family and kind of talked about their like rise and fall. So that was really interesting. Definitely recommend this if you are wanting to read more female authors, like early female authors. Highly recommend that. So now for the big book, which took up most of my month, and that is Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens. This was my favorite book that I read this month. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I half read it and half listened to it on audiobook. I listened to it narrated by Simon Vance, who I would recommend as a narrator. Really enjoyed him. And yeah, this is one of Dickens' like heftier works. I think it's almost 1,000 pages, or it's just over 1,000. Yeah, it's like 986 pages. I have it in the Penguin English Library edition. Really enjoyed this. Didn't quite surpass Bleak House for me, sadly. Sadly did not quite surpass Bleak House, but still really, really enjoyed this. Dickens often moralizes on societal woes of the Victorian era, and he tackled debt in this one, which was really interesting. It starts out in a debtor's prison. And so you kind of learn about that, and you learn about, you know, social hierarchy and all that good stuff. I really, really enjoyed this. I struggled a bit at the start. It was a bit slow going, but once I got into it and once I got listening to the audiobook, it definitely picked up pace. I found the main character, Little Dorrit, to be there were side characters that I much preferred to Little Dorrit. Little Dorrit was very sweet and very kind and very, you know, she was one of those nice people who are just so nice that sometimes you just want to shake. Like, they're almost too nice. And it was funny because as I was reading this, I work with a woman who is very much like Little Dorrit, and I was like, I don't think I like Amy. I think Amy I would strangle in real life. But her sister is absolutely fantastic, Fanny. I think that she is a fantastic female character in this, as well as I really enjoyed Flora, especially once I got to the narration part, because she just talks a mile a minute, and once you're listening to that on audiobook and you hear somebody talking nonstop with no breath, it really drives home the humor of it. Arthur Clennam was really great, and just, yeah, this was really good. Wouldn't necessarily say to start with this for Dickens, but it's definitely one that you can read early on in your Dickens, like, reading adventure. And then I decided to read, the last book that I read is Aphra Behn's Orinoco. Now, I somehow accidentally ended up with 2 copies of this. I have here The Art of a Novella from Melville Publishing House. I also have the Penguin, like the little black classic, the plain black ones. I ordered it, like the little black classic version, because they had mentioned in the podcast that this was like the questionably, arguably, the first novel ever written, and it's written by a woman. And so I was like, oh, perfect. And it was like $5 for the black classic one. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna order this. But it was also included in my Art of the Novella series. So I ended up reading this version because I really like these for reading. I think that they're really well typeset and really well laid out and really easy to read. And unfortunately, my copy of the Little Black Classic was damaged. They are sending me a new copy, so somehow I've ended up with 3 copies of this book. But this is a really interesting novel. Aphra Behn is a really interesting author. She was a Dutch spy and just all kinds of crazy stuff. Definitely look into her biography if you're, you know, wanting to find out more about early female authors. I definitely think the New Statesman podcast influenced my reading this month a little bit. But it basically tells the story of this African prince who gets sold into slavery. So this was written in, looking for the colophon. It was originally published in 1688. So at the height of at the beginning of the slave trade. And what's really interesting about this, now this does have a lot of the tropes that you find in white authors writing about like the slave trade and that kind of thing. It's definitely the noble savage kind of plays into this, but in a way, this is really revolutionary for its time. You guys know I sometimes have a hard time separating myself from, you know, the previous decades when they use offensive language. I do believe that the N-word is mentioned in here, but it's in the context of the work, it's understandable. And the main premise of this work is nobility can't be denied regardless of race or gender, which I think is really phenomenal for work that was written in 1688. Like, when you think about that in 1688, a woman author published one of the very first novels, and the main premise of it is that nobility cannot be denied regardless of race or gender. Incredible, like absolutely incredible. It is a very graphic, short little story. I would maybe, if you're not comfortable with, you know, I mean, it does deal with the slave trade, so that is to be expected. So if you're not comfortable with that, maybe give this a miss. But if you are interested in early female authors and like early views on the slave trade, I would definitely recommend this. I think I only gave it 2 stars because the writing, it's a bit hard to get through, but it's definitely really interesting and I think really important work of literature to read. So that's what I read in the month of April. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys read, if I need to give Anne Tyler a bit more of a chance, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye!